Celebrating 30 years of phenomenal trend forecasting, 5 times a week, Monday through Friday. Here's Gerald Celente with today's trends in the news.
Hi, this is Gerald Celente. It's Wednesday, May 18th, 2016, and here are some of today's trends in the news. Well, over there in China, markets weren't so good. Nope. Hang Seng in Shanghai down over 1%. Nikkei moved up a little bit, mixed over there in Europe, and here in the States, that was down over 100 points. Closed down just a bit, and it was up a bit as well. But how come? Well, we'll talk about that in a second. Meantime, oil went down a bit, and gold, boom, down over 20 bucks. And you know why? Because everybody was waiting for the Fed minutes. And that's what moved the markets today. June hike likely if economy picks up. How long do they keep going on with this act? Well, forever. Most Federal Reserve policymakers, remember, send your kid to college to become a policymaker. Yeah, you can spew out a lot of crap, get paid a lot of money for it, and make wrong decisions. It's an education worth paying for because, hey, coming out of college with $35,000 worth of debt and a degree in worthlessness, you might as well put it to good use. So, the policymakers said last month they would favor an interest rate hike in June if the economy rebounds from a first quarter slump. And the labor market continues to improve. Wait a minute. Am I stupid? Well, I guess I am. Because the numbers just came out last week with the labor market. Or 2 weeks ago. And what were they? Way below expectations. But it's going to improve, folks. Oh, and if inflation picks up. Again, they're making up this 2% inflation BS. Anyway, the Fed says it's uncertain whether the economy will meet Fed criteria. Economic growth appears to have accelerated in the current quarter after growing just 0.6%. No, 0.5% is the right number at an annual rate earlier this year. And it goes on here. Participants generally saw the risks stemming from global economic and financial developments as having diminished over the intermeeting period, but as continuing to warrant close monitoring, the minutes said. You know what that is.
Warning, bullshit alert.
All right. Look at the numbers coming out of China. Oh, they had a little good quarter there in Japan. The numbers are terrible. Look what's going on in Venezuela and Brazil. Look at all the data coming out on oil and commodities. There is no recovery, but here we go. Policymakers' biggest persistent concern appeared to be low inflation. A number of officials said that the risk to the outlook for inflation remains tilted toward the downside. So, will they raise rates? Well, the consensus on the street before this was only 10% said they would raise them in June. Now the numbers went up to about 27% after this. And that's what hit the markets. And that's what's hit gold. But let us not forget, if they're talking about the global economy doing better and they're going to raise rates, guess what? The global economy collapses. Because, as we keep going over, all of this money borrowed during quantitative easing and this cheap money period going into these emerging markets has to be paid back. If the value of the dollar goes up, they have to pay it back with more money, and they can't afford to pay it back at the rate the dollar is now. So, in other news, Target reported lower than expected increase in comparable sales, and it briefly fell, Target department stores briefly fell more than 9.5%. This is a quote by this guy, Yarborough. There's a lack of innovation on the electronic side, and we've long in the tooth in athleisure. Athleisure. Yeah, dress up like a slob between athletic. Yeah, like this nation is so athleisure. You know, you go to the airports, they say pigs can't fly. Yes, they can, man. They're all over the place. Athleisure. But he goes on to say, we need a new trend that will emerge to drive revenue growth. Amen. And the trend is in style. And these cats selling the stuff don't have a clue. Again, by their looks you shall know them, and how they dress, what they sell, and how they sell it. Hey, you ever see a plaid shirt? Hey, how about a plaid shirt that you don't have to tuck in? Hey, that's really cool, man. Anyway, there have been some elements of growth in the country. Spring revival over here. They're forecasting now a GDP growth of about 2.3%. Big deal. When you go back to the old days, when I was a young boy, back in the 60s, you had like a 5% annual GDP growth. And even under Reagan, it was a 4% GDP growth. Even under Bush, it was a 3% GDP growth. And Obama, that's right, an average of 2% GDP growth, and they call that good news. Home building, that housing starts rose 6.6% from April. That is a positive number. And another little couple of good things over here. Housing recovery has been a steady contributor to the broader economic growth over the past 2 years. In the first quarter, residential investment added 0.49 percentage points to the quarter's 0.5% GDP growth, according to the Commerce Department. Okay. And you're going to raise rates? It's doing this with near zero rates. You raise rates, watch things go down. And talking about going down, energy bankruptcies accelerate. Sandridge Energy, Inc., an early player in the American shale boom and one-time Wall Street darling, filed for bankruptcy. The Oklahoma City-based driller is the fifth energy company to file for bankruptcy in the past 6 days. 77 North American energy companies have now declared bankruptcy. Since the start of 2015, 175 oil and gas producers around the world are in danger of declaring bankruptcy. And another 160 cited for dire conditions. It's called a recovery. But what's keeping the market going? You know, those stock buybacks, of course, and Pfizer buys Anacor in turn to smaller deals, right? Their big deal they didn't go through with. Government wouldn't allow it. This is what they call a small deal. $4.5 billion. Small deal. Oh, and those great numbers that the Fed's talking about? We'll only talk about the facts because all they talk about is...
That was bullshit.
You know what the U.S. companies reported in earnings for the first quarter? A 7% drop in earnings. And the market should go up on this. Valuations, PE ratios are at a line consistent with facts. Remember, two things have increased the markets: mergers and acquisitions and stock buybacks. And that's why we have, it's Wednesday, trend alert. Trend alert. That's right. And this one's a trend forecast. Oil, gold, and equities. Hits and misses. Yes, gold is down a little bit today. Oil's down a little bit today. The markets are down a little bit today. Where's it all going and how to prepare for it? Listen to what this guy's doing. You may have heard this name before. George Soros buys Barrick as miners outpace gold. Soros Fund Management bought a 1.7% stake in the miner Barrick Gold in the first quarter, worth $263.7 million. Shares of the Canadian-listed company have surged 139% so far in 2016. I guess Soros does know what he's doing when it comes to investing. And on to some other news. They say that there's a shortage of workers for some jobs. So here's a front page story right here in the toilet paper of Record, the New York Times. One step short of hired. Employers say it's harder to find applicants who can pass drug tests. As an American citizen, I propose, and enough of us demand we shall have it, that every one of these little low-life people that call themselves politicians, we need to come up with a better word for politicians. A word that describes brown-nosers, suck-ups, lowlifes, people that sell out. Politicians is too nice a word. Anyway, from City Hall to Capitol Hill, and everything in between, everyone that runs for office, and all you people in the military running the show, and all you police, from top to bottom, drug tests. What are you on? No, I don't mean, taking a hit of this or that. What kind of drugs you on? What kind of pharmaceuticals that are screwing up your brains? And other recreational drugs, as they call them. If it's good enough for hired workers, if it's good enough for the folks, because that's the way they treat us, that's the way the trader at the top talks to us. Folks, I'm tired of being called a folk. As I said, folk you. Everybody running for office. Trump, Clinton, every one of them. I want drug tests. So, let's start a movement. It's up to you in whatever country you live in. Because you can see the effects from sick people that are whacked out on drugs. ISIS is down but not out. Another day brought another horrible set of headlines out of Baghdad. How many days do we have to hear this? Who destroyed the country? What sick mind? Bush, Cheney, Blair. The whole list. Drug tests. Maybe we'll prevent this because madmen are in charge. Hey, but the military will come up with a plan. We have another plan to fix this. And blah, 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 blah. And it goes on and on and on. And they got this new cat over there in the Philippines that's going to be the president very shortly. Yes, Mr. Duterte. And they say he's responsible for a lot of killings. And he went on to say, when he was mayor of the city over there, Davao, they said he claimed to have personally killed armed criminals while mayor, though no evidence has emerged to support those stories. Asked to respond to the report that he killed 700 people, he replied, no, it was not 700, but 1,700. Mr. Duterte promised, if elected, to deploy the police and military in an all-out assault on criminal gangs. It's going to be bloody, he told the business group. I will use the military and the police to go out and arrest them, hunt them down. Ah, hey, sounds like somebody I know. Hey, remember when this guy, he said it's okay to kill, he said it's okay to, he has no problem killing, quote, suspected criminals. That's like sending drone strikes in to kill suspected militants. And listen to his companion in this.
My fellow Americans, tonight I want to speak to you about what the United States will do with our friends and allies to degrade and ultimately destroy the terrorist group known as ISIL.
Degrade and destroy. Is that any different than hunt them down? Nope. And kill them. I think him and Obama are going to get along fine. Too bad Obama's going out of office. And as he goes out of office, they're whitewashing his record of criminality. Big story here in the toilet paper record. Pip. For president, 2 full terms of fighting wars. But it goes on. Mr. Obama has also approved strikes against terrorist groups in Libya, Pakistan, Somalia, and Yemen. Yeah, he's going to get along good with that guy. For a total of 7 countries where his administration has taken military action. Yeah. Huh. You know what they left out of this story? His invasion of Libya. Not invasion, the destruction of Libya. The overthrow of his sovereign nation. Not one word in here about that as they whitewash it. And the White House further whitewashes Obama's war crime record by saying things. The White House does semantic cartwheels to say neither mission is combat, meaning Afghanistan and Iraq. Semantic cartwheels? Why can't you call him a liar? Boots on the ground? They're there. But hey, remember President Obama, what he promised?
As I've said before, these American forces will not have a combat mission. We will not get dragged into another ground war in Iraq.
And then the article goes on to say, Pentagon officials roll their eyes at such denials. And senior officials, including the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staffs, have publicly called it combat. Well, then if you're publicly calling it combat, why can't you prostitutes, you little boys that write these articles, call the person who said he promised not to do it a liar? I'll tell you why. Because you're prostitutes. And that's why you need to subscribe to the Trends Journal. Because we're ahead of the news and on top of the trends. This is Gerald Celente, and that's some of today's Trends in the News.